Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
We're so excited. We're here with two filmmakers and that are very involved in a variety of productions. Welcome,
Scott Lyttle.
and
Matt Green.
Hi guys, so tell us, how did you trek yourself?
My thing is, I've just been a lover of sci-fi and everything since I was little. Star Wars came out when I was 5, and kind of just everything since then. And if it's sci-fi, I love it. How I really got into Star Trek, I always enjoyed the reruns, but in doing this, when I started getting into film here in Georgia and worked on a production where Matt was the director, and then I kind of carried over to the Star Trek First Frontier set, helping them build out things like that, and it just kind of took off from there, quite literally.
So I was 10 years old when I saw Star Wars, and that got me into wanting to be a filmmaker and all that stuff, like most people my age at the time. But as far as Star Trek, it started the year I was born, and my dad used to really be into it. And so as the reruns happened, I would watch them with him and enjoyed the characters and everything. And then once I got into Star Wars, then I got more into Star Trek. And just over the years, it's just been, it's just, I'm a sci-fi nerd, so why not?
Now, we were first exposed to your work when we saw the 11-foot model of the Enterprise. Tell us how that started.
I was in a production meeting for Star Trek First Frontier to build the sets. And I asked them what they were going to do for the Enterprise, and they said they don't have any money, so they're going to do it in CG because the model was going to cost $10,000, and they only had about 5. And I opened my mouth and said, I can do it for 5, which turned out to be I could do it for 8. But and that set a year-long journey of getting that model done from start to finish. I mean, we started with nothing and made all the forms, and roto turned all the plaster to make pieces, and mold those in fiberglass and pulled fiberglass pieces out of those, and it was a big undertaking. But Scott came in about 4 months in, and to help just for a couple of days, and he just kept coming back, and by the time it was done, he'd stayed for 8 months, and we finished it I think about a year and 2 weeks after we started, almost I think to the day.
So tell us about some of the unique details of this ship.
I added a Shuttle Bay to the big 11-foot model, and it's all lit up with LEDs and things like that. There's a lot of LED lighting in it. We did sign the inside of the ship before we sealed the hull. We do have our signatures in there, along with the date that we did it.
And some quotes from Star Trek. We put a few quotes from various things. I think mine was, my God, Jim, what have we done, from when it's burning in Star Trek 3, because we just spent a year building this thing. I don't remember what yours was, but we both quoted something.
Yeah, mine was second star to the right and straight on till morning.
Right.
Notice the pencil marks on it. Tell us what the pencil marks mean.
The pencil marks really just, they're grid lines, and they were in reality, in the TV series, they were put on by Matt Jeffries. I know he put them on somewhere. It wasn't put on for the cage, because if you watch it, and when it does the zoom in on the opening, it's totally flat and there's no lines there. But I know it was added somewhere for where Nomad has gone before, or before TV production. I don't remember quite where it is. But they were put on just because Matt Jeffries thought he needed something to break it up and make it look like it was built out of panels that had been assembled.
And we spent quite a bit trying to get those lines right. I mean, it was a real engineering feat to get those lines to go down that curve and back up and over the edge, and because if it's not perfectly straight, it's a deal. So Scott built a jig, because he's really good at mechanically figuring things out like that. Built a jig that we ran a pencil down it, a mechanical pencil, so the size wouldn't change down the whole thing. And then we made another jig to make circles, concentric circles from the center as we went out and out and out. It was, every day we get up, I'd think to myself, I'd wake up and I got things I need to do today, but I have to work on the damn ship. But at the end, you look at it and you go, wow, we just built the Enterprise. And it's probably the best thing I've ever worked on.
Now, we first saw it at Dragon Con when you brought the ship on tour to some different conventions. Kavor, what was your first feeling when you saw this massive, magnificent ship?
Yeah, I walked into the Trek panel room, and there was this big model of the Enterprise, and I thought, wow, I mean, look at that. Like, how did they even get that in here? It's great. And you walk up to it, and you can see how detailed it was, and it was just, it was awesome. We can tell you put a lot of work into this.
Well, the funny part is that if you getting in the room was difficult because when we built it, we didn't bother to make the saucer and the secondary hull come apart. We thought it'd be stronger the other way, and we should have made the saucer and the secondary hull come apart because then you could just turn it sideways and walk it in. But we had to crate it in this giant crate and then take it out and try to figure out how to fit it through there while nobody drops anything, and then get it all put together. And then the nacelles and the nacelle struts just drop in. But it was quite a feat. And we had more than one instance after we had attached the saucer to the secondary hull that we realized in my shop at the time I only had like doors. I didn't have a roll-up door. So we were like, yeah, how are we going to get this out of here? So that was kind of an interesting feat.
And we also saw it at Monsterama. You had an interesting story about transporting that to Monsterama.
Yeah, the transport case that we made, which actually sat on the back of Matt's truck. When we got it off and we brought it in, we were pushing it into the hotel lobby, and we got to the double doors that slide open, and we hit it, and we were about an inch shy on the width. So, or rather, the doors were an inch short of the width of our case. So we had to take the case apart to get it into the lobby. And of course, we're doing this while all the other convention goers and things like that are watching this, and I'm sure they were having a little bit of fun with us and just enjoying the entertainment value of how do you get an Enterprise into a hotel.
Now that has ceased touring conventions. Where is the 11-foot Enterprise now?
It's sitting in the producer's living room. Kenny Smith, he's got it sitting in his living room, and it takes up most of his living room. And I would say normally I'd think it would be to his wife's dismay, but I think she enjoys it as much as he does. So.
And that's in Florida?
Yeah, it's in Orlando.
So now another project that we got a chance to see, and it's absolutely beautiful, is the Shuttle Bay. Tell us the story about how that Shuttle Bay came into production.
Well, as you know, we made that. Well, I told you we made that little tiny Shuttle Bay. It's a 187 Shuttle Bay, and it was. I mean, it's small. It's like the width of my hand, probably maybe 5 inches across. And part of the film requires scenes shot in the Shuttle Bay, and that model, that little miniature 187th scale model Shuttle Bay, is just too small to be able to film properly in. So we decided that 1/24th Shuttle Bay would be a lot easier to film. So we went and built it, and probably if we had built it straight through, probably take 3 months. But because I was back and forth on some other jobs, it took us about 6 months to be able to really build that shuttle, this whole Shuttle Bay.
We decided on 1/24th scale because that was the scale we could get models of the shuttles at. So I bought a couple models from Randy Cooper, who's a amazing model maker. He used to work at ILM that sells a lot of models, and we built those up. And I think it took us 7 months of off and on to build the Shuttle Bay. Probably it's 3 months worth of work, but with having jobs and things, we had to go back and forth. But yeah, it was a lot of work. But that one was a little more fun to do. The Enterprise was more fun to finish, but I think this one was more fun to work on because it was more like model building. Whereas the Enterprise was a lot of just sanding and checking and sanding and checking. There's a lot of repetition with that and trying to figure out little things that you'd never see. But with this, we had a lot of details. We were able to make it more like a real model build. It was a lot of fun.
The Shuttle Bay, I mean, yeah, that was a cool set too. The whole model, and we got to look through it through the different openings. You have one on each end, and then you have the ones on the sides. I mean, that was so cool the way it was designed.
I know originally when they built it, the 1/12th scale model, which was built by, I forget, I don't know if Dayton built it or not, but whoever the folks that built it.
You're talking in the 60s?
Right, yes, yeah, and right, the 1/12th model. Yeah, I don't remember if Richard Dayton, who did the Enterprise model, did the same. He did the Shuttle Bay model. I don't remember if it was the same crew or not. Mm-hmm. There was no back wall that was ever built, so there's always been this back and forth with the fans about, well, what does the back of the Shuttle Bay look like? Well, the answer is that it doesn't look like anything in reality. And when we put ours together, Kenny has a technical advisor who knows a lot about Star Trek, but we were back and forth about what it should look like versus what we thought it should look like, and so it was ultimately was like, okay, well, we're building it, so we're going to make it like how we're seeing it.
So what was the consensus about that?
Well, it was, we put the 2 doors in. That seemed to be fine. I know some other renditions. Yeah, the 2 roll-up doors, and then some. Yeah, I've seen other renditions where they have 1 roll-up door, and some of the other fan films have ones like that. Well, but ours, we decided to go with 2 based on the idea of there's supposed to be 7 shuttlecraft. Well, how did you fit all the 7 shuttlecraft in there? And years we could tell the only way you could really do it is having 2 doors, because you got two behind there, and then the other 5 would actually sit below, or 4 would sit below, and 1 would basically sit in the shuttle bay at all times.
So there's been some speculation of exactly where the shuttle entry door was to the corridor in the episode Journey to Babel. Did the shuttle doors open to the shuttle bay, or was there another bay below? What are your gentlemen's feelings on that, and how did you reflect this in the model?
I think that what you're seeing in the show is based on their budget, and that's why there's a big gray wall behind them. Because at that time, audiences weren't as sophisticated. They were just happy to see something science fiction. But so we put that door on the back wall. It's not really that door. It's hard to explain. Once again, because we had the ability to do what we wanted. But the doors, the red doors on the sides, I think it was one of those doors looking at the other side of the... And the shuttle essentially would be covering the other side doors. So, but it was all... And that's the part of model building that sometimes gets... When you're building something that has already been imagined, is that you have to play that game of... when people make movies, and myself being a film director, I know that you have to fudge things all the time. So what's there and what's really supposed to be there is almost always different, because you're putting things up on apple boxes to make them taller, or you're putting a wall behind something to make it so you don't see what's behind it, that kind of thing. And it's just all a trick of the eye. So we just had to make up our own version, and I think what we came up with was relatively enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I actually really like the idea, like in Journey to Babel, that the shuttle bay does come down through the floor. That's my personal thoughts on that. But for us, when we're doing First Frontier, we basically just had the whole entire thing take place in the shuttle bay. So, and there was no kind of sliding open door effect that like they had in Journey to Babel. You're in the shuttle bay. That's it. So there was never any real issue about kind of in and out. There is one scene there which there's a transition missing in it, and it does kind of it gets me a little bit, and I always bring it up, but we just didn't have the ability to make the transition work, and when you see the film,
the problem, as I was speaking earlier, they built this big model at 1/12 scale, and if you look at the plans for the ship and the plans for the bay, they actually don't fit in each other properly. So they didn't have the limitations of fitting it inside a ship. So we kind of enjoyed that too, in that we were able to go, okay, it is what it is because it's what it needs to be. It looks the best. We went for aesthetics, and you always do it, especially from a filmmaking standpoint. Everything needs to be what looks good. We're not making accurate things. We're making pretty things. So that's what we did.
It's about the original filming limitations compared to the adjustments that you made for your shuttle bay.
Well, our shuttle can be taken apart. You can actually film it from the sides, from the top, from the front, from the back. The only thing you can't film it is from the bottom.
And we never got to do it, but if you wanted to, if we needed a shot, we could have actually made a piece at the bottom to shoot it with no floor and look up at the top. We actually considered a shot of the shuttle coming down toward the camera, but time didn't allow, and we were out of money at that point. So,
yeah, time and budget.
Yeah.
So,
but I like the way that you have these little breakaway walls that you can put cameras in there, because in the 60s they didn't have cameras small enough for that, correct?
Right, yeah. The original 1/12, I know it had called to have removable sides, but somehow it got lost, and the only net result was that there was only one way to film the Enterprise shuttle bay, and that is from the back wall.
And that's why we always see it like that.
Exactly. That's why you always see it pointed out towards space.
the first time they shot anything with the Enterprise with what we call a snorkel lens, which is a long, skinny lens, was for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Because I think back in the 60s, now I could be wrong about this, but I've been doing research, and I think they didn't have them, they hadn't invented proper snorkel lenses yet, so that you could get the camera farther away from the model, and then the lens is close to the model. And I just finished reading the book that came out last week, the Art and Visual Effects of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which if you haven't seen it is an amazing book. But I'm a big fan of the motion picture. A lot of people give it a little bit of crap here and there. I think it's an amazing piece of work, and I understand.
Absolutely, we're huge fans of it. It's beautiful.
It had great visuals, right?
I understand why there's problems with it to fans sometimes, but, and I'll admit part of it is when I saw it, what I was doing at that time in my life, I was 12 years old. I actually, it's a great little story. We went on opening day, me and my buddy, we went on opening day and we're standing in line and this is back when you couldn't buy advance tickets. This is 79. So we got right up to we were the next ones to step up and get our tickets and they went sold out first show. So we had to stand there for 2.5 hours and wait for them to sell tickets again and then get in the second line. So we got to watch all of our friends who were in front of us come out and say, yeah, it was awesome. And we just sit there and watch and eat crow. But, and I don't know, I just saw it recently on the 40th anniversary up at Mall of Georgia and it holds up beautifully, and it's a spectacular piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, I love everything. I think the uniforms and costuming is a little lacking, but other than that, I still enjoy the film. It's still great to watch.
There was a reviewer once that I read when I was a kid, and he said when Star Trek II came out, he said Star Trek II is everything the first film wanted to be. And I think he's right in that they hadn't found the balance yet for because they never intended to make a feature film. Oh, I'm sorry, they intended it several times, but they never got a chance to do it because everybody said no one's ever made a TV show into a feature film, and it was the first one that anybody ever did that with. So I think they were treading new ground. They didn't know what to do, and they thought spectacle. Studio heads think spectacle is important, but fans know that spectacle isn't always the thing. But I think it's a very deep film too. It's got a lot to good questions to ask about our future. So,
did anything from that film specifically influence your career choices in going into production and what you gentlemen do?
At that time, not really. I mean, yes and no. Yes, the sci-fi and everything else did influence my, what I wanted to do at that time, which I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go into space. It did help fuel my career, which I went to school. I became an engineer, and unfortunately, I never made it to NASA or anything else like that. But I always enjoyed watching films and everything else. So after several years in the engineering field, I wound up switching careers to film. So in a way, now I'm enjoying sci-fi. So the film that I watched, while it influenced my career from a technical aspect, it's actually now carrying through from a visual aspect where I'm also carrying a lot of my technical knowledge through to it, and such like model building and things like that. So it is kind of weird that it kind of hit on a dual plane almost.
So you would be wearing a red shirt on the original series?
Well, yes, because as we all know, it's Scotty.
That's it.
Yeah,
exactly.
In fact, when in college, I actually had a picture of Montgomery Scott on the wall and had the caption below. It says, "Isn't it funny how all great engineers are named Scott?"
That's awesome.
Scott and I have a unique relationship. He's the engineer and I'm the artist. And I mean, he's a little artist and I'm a little engineer. I'm what I call an armchair engineer. I can build about anything, but I don't know the right way to do it. I just do it. So he and I complement each other well, especially on the Enterprise build a lot of times because he's the guy that'll do all the math and say, no, it's got to be like this. And I'm the guy who will realize that 80% of the time he's right. And 20% of the time I'll go, no, Scott, you're overthinking this. Just do this, this, and this, and we get it. And a lot of times it translates the other way, where I'll be going for the art 80% of the time, and he'll look at me and go, that'll never work, and here's why that won't fit together. And he'll do some piece of math that I don't understand, and it works out perfectly. So he understands compound curves and things like that. I just know what looks good. My background is in, prop making and I've been making movies since I was, since I was 10 years old. A friend of mine had a movie camera when I came out seeing Star Wars, and within 2 weeks, we're making our first film, which I still have. But about 2 years later, after the motion picture came out, I went and bought the Enterprise model, the refit model, and I built my own dry dock out of balsa wood, and I put the model on a stand and put it on the bed with a sheet and hung the dry dock from the ceiling and put a black background up, and I'd slide the ship across the bed and it looked like it was leaving the thing. And I don't have that film anymore. I wish I did, but so that's always been one of my favorite sequences ever. I mean, and I've had people tell me they think that the first scene of the Enterprise being shown in motion pictures is boring, but I think it's one of those beautiful pieces of filmmaking ever done as far as special effects are concerned.
When I saw the movie as a child, I thought it was boring back then, but I can appreciate it more. When I got older, then I could see more of the beauty of it and understand more of the story and how deep it was, as you said.
And let me add that Persis Kambata is the reason that I have a weird fetish for pretty bald women.
Agreed.
So, and one of the neat things with working with Matt and I, it's always interesting because while we both may kind of feel that we're right sometimes, we both kind of have to take the stance of, okay, well, let's try your way, let's try my way. So we both have to we both understand each other in that we can't be totally right, so to speak. We both have to kind of take each other's input. And there are times where, we both have to know where we can kind of back down and trust another person. Because many times when we're back and forth building something, it's funny watching us argue because we both had the exact same idea, but we're just coming at it from opposite ends. So somewhere in the middle, we come in, we're both totally in sync with each other when we finally see each other's vision.
As a rule, if it's his job we're doing, or it's whoever's job it is that the other one is helping with, because we've done a few things together, but as a rule, he'll come to me with, hey, I've got this Hot Wheels track I need to build for somebody, or I'll come in with a prop I'm building and he's going to help me. Whoever's job it is always gets deferred to. We don't have an ego that way. It's never me going, no, it has to be my way because I'm right. We just defer to the other one and we get it done. So it's a good relationship.
Tell us about this fan film that you're involved with and you've been involved with for years. We're really excited about that.
Star Trek First Frontier. We shot in September of...
September 2015.
Yeah, right. Because I met my wife like a month after. I met her that January. The next few months later. So it was wow. It went on, and we shot for a month, and then he and I built the Enterprise. Well, let's back up. I got the money to do the sets and the Enterprise 4 months before we shot. We spent the entire hot summer building those sets in a warehouse with no AC, and then Scott hadn't come in yet. He didn't know me yet. And myself and a guy named Roman Weaver and his father, Dennis, came in. And they came every day for 4 months with no money, no pay, just because we all were doing this a labor of love. We got the sets in. They shot everything in a month. And then I started the Enterprise build. And then he came in and helped me. We did, I want to say, when did we finish it? It was right before DragonCon, wasn't it? Yeah, so it was September. So
yeah, I think we came in. It was around December 2015. I think I came in, started helping you with that. Right. It was late December, December, January, back and forth.
I think we used DragonCon as a deadline for us because we could have kept working on it. But I think we got to a point where we said, okay, this is our deadline, and we finished it like 2 days before DragonCon. No, not 2 days, like 2 weeks, because we had to do the crate and all that, and so it was. It was a lot of work. And then after that was done, then Kenny spent the next couple of years working on visual effects, and we built the hangar bay. We did, or the landing bay. We did...
built the dry dock.
When we went to Universal in February the next year, after the DragonCon.
2017. Yeah.
We went to Universal in Florida on one of the green screen stages and set the whole thing up with a dry dock that we built. And Scott had the idea of reverse engineering the dry dock to be what it would have looked like 15 years earlier from, what was it, 15 years? No, from 15 years from, so 25 years from the...
Something like that, somewhere in a 15 to 25 year range prior to motion picture.
Right. So we wanted it to look like that dry dock, but be. And we did some things to make it a little different because the dry dock and motion picture it's kind of the same shape all the way down. We did a couple insets to make it look different, but it was mostly just PVC pipe and rust red spray paint. And when we got there, what was the guy's name that helped us with all the detailing?
Tom Gardner.
So he came in when we were on the day, and just he had a little box of Greeblies. He's a model maker from Orlando, and just put tons of detail on it, little stripes and things, and made it just come up, pop, and come alive. And we shot that for 4 days. We were in Orlando for 4 days, and then that was kind of the end of our involvement. Actually, we did the landing bay after that, but that was the end of our involvement with filming. And then over the years, I've helped Kenny with a few things here and there to get certain shots he needed done in the computer and so forth. But he ended up hiring a guy who I don't have his name handy that did all the effects in the last year. Like 6 months, isn't it? Yeah, the guy came like 6 months ago.
So let's talk about some of the actors that are in the film and what separates it from other productions.
Well, first thing is all the actors in it are SAG actors, Screen Actors Guild actors. So they're all professional type actors who have a background in acting versus fans. Because this was all shot in September 2015, and the fan rules came down something like, a
month later.
Was it a month later?
Yes.
I figure it was like a month or something. Or a few months.
All that happened like a month later. Because we were all like, what do we do? And Kenny said, I did it before they came down. I'm just going to treat it as if, so there you go.
Yeah, so as a result, it can be defined as being in some kind of a gray area.
Grandfathered.
Yes. Well, we have Captain April is, of course, is the first captain of the Enterprise, which was in one of the animated series. That is actor Rob Pralgo, who is good friend of ours at this point. He's been in a number of films. He's got a credit in Avengers: Infinity War, and he's been in Sully, and he was an American Maid. He had a little small part in that. So and he's done a number of things, and really good guy, and he does a little bit of acting too, but just real solid professional guy.
He's also one of the producers on the show, too. See, Rob's been my friend for like 20 years. He was on my second film. I met him when I made my second feature. But I don't remember the names of a lot of the other actors because they're all... Well, we know we've got from Stargirl.
Well, we have Mark Ashworth, who was Sir Justin from Stargirl. He is the ship's engineer. Then we also we have Brianna Ferris. She plays an Andorian. I'm not sure what else she's done. We have Brandon Thane Wilson. He has a small little part as a kind of a young ensign, and he has moved on. In fact, he's actually going to be seen in Wonder Woman 84. So it was really his career is moving very nicely right now. So we have Vince Canlis, who is also one of the other guys too, and it's kind of ironic in that Rob Pralgo and Vince Canlis can also be seen in Axanar, and Rob Pralgo actually is reprising his role as April, and then Vince Canlis has a slightly different role in Axanar.
And we're huge Axanar fans.
Yeah, we loved the Prelude to Axanar film. It was wonderful, and we're excited too that Alec Peters is still producing films.
So let's tell about what did you do for Axanar as well? Weren't you involved somewhat in those projects?
Well, Matt and I, we both helped. We helped bring the set from California over during the unloading. So we helped unload it off the trucks and got it placed.
Reassemble it.
Yeah.
We did a lot of reassembling, and it's an amazing set. I mean, he spent real money on that set. It's built. Our set was beautiful to the eye, but it was a one use. We knew we'd use it once and it could throw it away. And he built his to last. I mean, you could put his in a museum; it'd probably last for many, many, many years. But it's really accurately done too. They had a lot of stuff CNC'd and everything, and we did all ours by eye. Everything was hand saws and the way it was done originally. But no, it is a beautiful set, and he's got all the. One thing that I was jealous of is he's got all the computer screens around the edge. Every one of them is connected to a computer, and every one of them has something actually working on them. Ours, we had to put in just things with lights that blinked behind them to, But at the same time, it works. I've seen the film already, and your eye isn't drawn to that stuff. You're in the Enterprise. You're in the and it feels to me that actually feels more like 1970 or 1967 Star Trek because that's what they did. They just had lights behind clear panels and things with artwork on them. So, but no, Axanar is an amazing looking film. So I haven't seen the new stuff yet, but Alex says it looks great. So
yeah. In fact, I know Kenny's vision was that he really wanted to reproduce 60s Star Trek. I mean, from the way it was filmed, the way it was built, the way everything was done in the 60s was really kind of what he wanted to do. But hence using the models, things like that. So he really wanted to capture this feel, not just in the look, but even mostly in the way it was done, and kind of bring it forward, forward-wise technology wherever it could be done.
And we love practical effects. We see the difference, and what you guys are producing is absolutely gorgeous.
Kenny actually wanted it to be 11 feet, just like the series, so bad. And I tried to convince him to do it at 8 feet, because at 8 feet, the dish is only 4 feet wide, which means I can use a single piece of underwood to build this shape for it and everything. And he insisted, and so we would have been able to finish the thing about 2 months earlier if it had been 8 feet. And I think it would have been filmable just fine, but he really wanted to have the same thing. And then I haven't seen it yet, but Scott went to the Smithsonian and saw the original. And I was amazed when he called me and said, ours was pretty spot on. I mean, it's different in some ways on purpose because the dish is different because the dish was supposed to be 15 years earlier, so we kept increasing it. We have the gold nacelle or the bronze nacelles in the front domes because it was from pre-cage. But other than that, he said ours was actually more accurate because our engines both have insets. The camera away side on the original one is round. They just painted it on. So.
That's right. We noticed that when we went to the Smithsonian that it's only half of it is viewable. If you look at the back half, you see the exposed wires and unpainted.
Yeah, that's the reason on the original series that the Enterprise is always going from left to right. You always see it from that angle, except the one time when they reversed it.
Reverse the letters, yep. turn the letters around and do it the other way.
Right.
I saw the motion picture Enterprise at Planet Hollywood in New York, and it was in pretty bad shape, and I would have given my left arm to refurb it. And I'm hoping somebody will do that, or maybe they have, I don't know. But this has been 10 years ago. But it was there hanging. I mean, maybe I'm assuming it was the original one, because I know the same one went through the first 6 films, like all the original series. It's the same Enterprise every time. They just refurbed it. And when you read in the new book about what they did to make it and the paint job on the thing, it's hard to believe that it didn't fall apart because they didn't make it that strong. They said that the structure was beautifully strong, but the outside was just thin vacuum formed plastic in a lot of places, and it lasted all that time. And I know, knowing how I know effects guys, that I'm sure it probably was in bad shape every time, and they just turned around and had to just take the time to rework it. I'm aware, a buddy of mine who worked at ILM said that they got the ship back for 6 after it went to another shop for 5. And when they got it back, they had taken the trunk of cables that came out of it and just cut them off. So they had to literally open the model up, which was not easy, and go in and rewire everything. And I think that's kind of a dick move to go through and just go, whoever gets it next can deal with it, click, so it'll fit in the box.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the nacelles, one thing that's interesting is if you ever go see the Enterprise, when it goes back on display, because it's currently in storage at the renovation at Air and Space, if you come up behind the Enterprise so that you've got the nacelles facing you, the left or port nacelle does have an indentation in it, but the starboard nacelle on the interior does not have an indentation. It's actually been painted to look like there's an indentation, and that was actually painted in when they did Trouble with Tribbles, when they actually dropped the camera right between the nacelles. And actually that's actually the Trouble with Tribbles is that's the episode in which they locked the look of the Enterprise at Smithsonian. But if you actually look at it carefully, at first I didn't realize it. In fact, because I was looking very carefully over it when comparing it to our Enterprise. And I was stopping, I looked, I was like, oh, those cheaters. Said they didn't do an indentation on the starboard nacelle because, well, you never saw it. So I can see why they didn't bother doing it. But it's interesting because, even someone who's kind of trained to look for it, it can pass you by because they had some really good artists on there because it is painted to look like it has an indentation. So all of the angles are there. But once you go up and you look at it real close, you can see the curvature of the nacelle is still there without the indentation.
Scott actually called me twice from the Smithsonian because we also did. I got the contract to build the Mercury capsules for Hidden Figures, and he calls me and he says, "I'm standing in front of the capsule, and I think we got the shape of the indentions wrong because weren't they there? I think we did them. No, yeah, you said they were S's, and we did them curve flat, curve flat. I thought you told me they were more." Weren't they? Okay, maybe we got them right. Maybe you called and told me we got them right.
Yeah. I called you, told you we got it right. Yeah, because
was there a controversy of the shape of them at one point?
Well, it was. Yeah, it was almost like how many ridges and stuff were on there, and we had found that model, the kit from Atomic City, which had it. So we got it. We got it really close, and we kind of took an educated guess, as I could say to it. And it was only until it was later, after we had already made the molds for Hidden Figures, that I found out when I got back in touch with the person that designed the kit, he had actually taken indentations off Liberty Bell 7 with permission from Kansas Cosmosphere. And they turns out we were less than 10% off.
Wow.
And we had almost no reference material. We had a model kit, we had a couple pictures and books, and there was nothing else. We literally were taking a guess. And it turned out to be, nobody ever questioned it. It looked great. There were things about it that we wanted to do more that they didn't want us to because they said, I will never see that. And I really wanted to add things. But, at the end of the day, and they also ended up in Zombieland too. They're in the Mercury capsules you see in the White House when they're hanging out in the toy room.
Right. And this was the funny thing where, me growing up wanting to be an astronaut and following Mercury and the big space programs and everything else, that's where this came in. It was my first paid film job or film crew job. So I was like, okay, wait a minute. I get to build something out of NASA, who I've been following for years. And I was like, okay, yeah, you could not have found a more perfect job for me for film.
That's amazing. Now, your attention to detail is incredible when we look at it up close in real life. But also you have some creativity amongst you, especially with these shuttles that you made. Let's talk about them and the names for them.
That's all Kenny. He came up with the names. Figured that the Tyson would be. He was trying to pay homage to, but yeah, it's Tyson, and then what's the other one?
And Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan, yeah. And there's one more. He came up with more, but those are the only two we made. Yeah.
I've only thought he came up with those two.
I thought he told me he had all 7 figured out, but he didn't.
So we have 2 that are awesome because we grew up watching Cosmos with Carl Sagan,
Right.
and then we end up watching
Cosmos
the update with Neil deGrasse Tyson. So like that hits home on so many levels of little Easter eggs and coolness in the production.
And then if you grew up with Carl Sagan on Cosmos, then you'll understand when I say the universe is full of billions and billions of stories.
It's true.
Yeah, and we had, and I actually dug through the history to find out that shuttles 1 and 3 really have never been named. So while we are technically not canon, we are not against canon either.
Yeah. Oh, I love the fact. Yeah, everything that you are doing is a labor of love, and it seems like you're wedging it in seamlessly.
Yeah, that's our we're trying to say that yes, well, this is how it could have been, and everything lines up with the canon, even if it isn't canon.
Tell you the truth, I'm liking a lot of fan productions where it fits into prime timeline canon more than I feel Discovery is.
We won't talk about Discovery.
Gentlemen, anything else you could say about the production? We're eagerly anticipating it. Where can listeners find out more and watch the movie?
I believe it's going to be on YouTube. Don't quote me on that yet because it hasn't been released yet. It is. I have seen the finished film. No, I haven't seen it with everything done, but we've both seen cuts of the film, the whole story, and it works. It's an enjoyable film. It's better than it should be based on the effort that's gone into it. And does that make sense? What I mean is, it's considering that it's only costing under $200,000, which I know sounds like a lot to some people, but to do a science fiction feature film is insanely cheap. And everybody got paid something. I mean, there was no. It wasn't like he just put all the budget into the movie. He actually made sure we were taken care of a little bit here and there, which was nice. So.
Yeah, I mean, probably First Frontier they do have their Facebook page, so it'll probably be posted there. And if not, I'm sure there will be, it's on the YouTube page, the Facebook page, but take a look at First Frontier on Facebook. And if the link won't be on YouTube, I'm sure it'll be posted there where you can follow the link.
And also be aware that he's planning on posting some form of Indiegogo or Kickstarter after the fact to simply help recoup some of the costs. So if anybody wants to contribute to that once it's available, please keep an eye out because it really would help. Because I know that he's pretty much spent everything and put his heart into this, and I'd like to see him get some of it back. So Kenny's an amazing guy, and he's the guy who'll give you a shirt off his back. It'll be a red shirt, but he'll give it to you off his back.
All right, thanks a lot. It was a great interview.
Thanks, it was awesome.
Yeah, it was great. Live long and prosper.
And we have with us right now the director of Star Trek First Frontier, Kenny Smith. Welcome, Kenny.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me on, guys.
So tell us, how did you trek yourself?
Okay. I think the universe trekked me. I don't think I trekked myself. I think I was born a Star Trek fan. I came out of the womb loving Star Trek. I don't know how, but I did. I was little when my dad died. He died when I was 6 years old. But my best memories, and the only ones really that I have, are with him and watching Star Trek. So once I moved on in life and I got older, Star Wars took a little bit of a precedent there in the little kid ages. But when I hit 13 years old, by the time I had known Star Trek my entire life, and I loved it, and that's when everything went to Star Trek. I met my best friend Harley Stafford in Lakeland, Florida. That's where I was raised. And this is a great story. I walked onto the school bus for the first day of 7th grade. And he was sitting in his chair, and he had a little doodle of the Enterprise refit from Star Trek: The Motion Picture on his folder. And I sat down next to him and I said, I know what that is. And we became friends. And to this day, we're best friends. As a matter of fact, he helped me write some of the story. But Star Trek has always been a part of my life. was able to go on the very, very first Star Trek cruise in 1987. And that was promoted by a man named Joe Motes. And he has done Star Trek conventions in Florida for 30 years or more at this point. I met him on the cruise and we became friends. And then I started visiting him at his house, and he would do his conventions, and I was starting to be behind the scenes. So by the time I was 16 years old, I was doing my own Star Trek conventions with him. I was promoting them as his co-promoter. And the first one we did was DeForest Kelley. I remember him flying into the airport, and I mean, I'm a 16-year-old Star Trek fan. I was going crazy, picking him up at the airport and driving him to the convention and getting to know him, he and his wife Carolyn, that weekend. And that was just one of the greatest weekends of my life. I did one more convention with Joe, and that was a few months later. This is 1988, and we did the very first convention for Star Trek: The Next Generation, and we had Patrick Stewart signed up as the new captain of the new Enterprise, but he had to back out at the last second, so we ended up with Jonathan Frakes filled in for him. And so our very first Star Trek: The Next Generation convention was with Jonathan Frakes, and that was in I believe it was May or so of 1988. So I've been there from the beginning. I've been a Star Trek fan my entire life. I understand Star Trek. It's a feeling more than anything. The love that I have for it is I guess it's the same as most people. It's just a feeling. It has lent itself to my life. I always had a bigger vocabulary than I would have had, because I was looking up words like indigenous, because Khan said indigenous, so I wanted to know what that meant. So I went and looked it up, so my vocabulary was a little bit better. And Star Trek filled in the gaps for me. It was something that I just couldn't escape from. But after I did the second convention, I joined the Army. I decided I needed to do my part to keep freedom free. And so, or it's not free. So once I got out of the Army, though, I didn't know what I was going to do. So I met back with Joe Motes, and we started a convention company of my own called Icon. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to become a director. And I knew that most people in Hollywood were piling in, trying to be directors, trying to be actors. There's probably a line you'd never be able to get to the front of. And so I decided to do it a backdoor way by starting my own company, a convention company, and we would bring celebrities. It's called Icon, EYECON. We've done its convention since 2006, and I used the money that I made from that to fund Star Trek First Frontier, and that's when the ball got rolling on Star Trek First Frontier. The first time that I ever thought of Star Trek First Frontier was in 2002, when I saw a fan film on the internet. The internet was still a little bit new then. YouTube was still coming around, and so I remember some fans had made a hallway piece, a set piece, and they had a communicator console, and their entire film, it was maybe 20 minutes long, was set in front of that set piece because they didn't have anything else to work with. But it was so creative, and I thought to myself, well, I think I can actually make an episode myself, one of my own episodes. And what do I want to do? Well, I'm fascinated with the Enterprise, so I want to show the first launching of the Starship Enterprise. And that's what I did. I went from that. It was another 15 years before I could get the monies together, I'd say 13 years, 13 or 14 years before we could film it. It was 2015 when we filmed. So that's my road of Star Trek. I have the Mego toys, the collectible Star Trek toys, all my whole life. I've played with those, the Captain Kirks and Mr. Spocks and all the figures, and I collect Star Trek toys. I have a pretty good collection. Star Trek is part of my blood, and it is part of who I am, and I owe it something, is what I feel. And that's what this movie is. It's hopefully giving something back to something that has given me so much.
So you've learned a lot about Star Trek, and you've learned a lot from it and grown with it. And I mean, just like us, we've been fans since we were kids too.
Aren't we all, though? It seems like that's the common story. I get this more than anywhere else. I've told this in a few other interviews, but this is the truth. The number one thing I'm told is that Star Trek is a show that people watched with their dads when they were little. For me, it was the same way. I watched it with my dad, but it goes back to a time when we only had 4 channels on television. So one of them was Star Trek, and you're almost kind of, if you want to watch TV, that's really all that was on, except for maybe daytime soap operas at the time. But it was always on at 5 p.m., which is dinner time. And so I remember watching it with my dad and my mom too sometimes, and it just became this thing that reminds me of him now. I guess that's that's one of the best parts of it, is that I feel like he's still with me when I'm watching it.
I could totally relate to that, Kenny, because my dad got me into Star Trek when I was young too, with the Mego dolls in pre-K and kindergarten.
Those Mego dolls are exceptional. Okay, they have interchangeable clothes. They don't make action figures like this anymore. They had interchangeable clothes, so that if Kirk wanted to go on a, you know, as a child, if Kirk wanted to break into the Planet of the Apes, you could put the Planet of the Apes outfits on him, and then he was undercover. You know, Mego's the greatest.
Oh yeah, we collect Migos too.
Oh, awesome.
So let's talk about First Frontier. How did you get this going?
I've just delved into a little bit, but for the most part, it was an idea that I had for years, and it was always in the back of my mind. But when I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't raised rich. With my father passing away and my mother working 2 or 3 jobs, to make a movie is not as easy as taking your video camera and filming something at home, and you can't release that and hope that anybody would see anything special other than maybe laugh at it, And I did do that, by the way. If you look on my YouTube, if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see my homemade 16-year-old Star Trek fan film I made with video cameras and my best friend, and camera effects and sound effects that were playing in the background. It's awesome. Yeah, I think it's great. But anybody else is welcome to laugh at it. But so that need to make a Star Trek film, I believe that I was bred to do it. I believe in God, and I believe that if I was placed on this earth, that I was placed on this earth to do that. And I believe that he gave me the skill, and he actually gave me the movie itself. A lot of times I was sitting in front of the editing booth, and I didn't think I could ever do anything like this. It's just not in my talent level, but yet there it is. So I'm happy with it. But how did I start it? I guess it would be jealousy of those fans that had made their own fan films. And that slight little twinge inside that made me feel like I had to do it myself, so I could see if maybe I could do it better. A lot of the fan films now are done really well. They're very, very creative, and I have nothing but love for all of them. Every single person who makes their fan films today has gone the extra step to show that they love Star Trek, and I have nothing but love for them. But acting itself is a career job. It is something. It's not something that you can just hop in and. Yeah, I'm sure you know that. It's these guys. Robert Prauga, who played Robert April, studied for 6 months the script. So when he walked on the set, he knew every line, and he knew everybody else's lines too. So it was absolutely professional. It made the job very easy, and you can see the product at the end. It's a hard thing to act. I can't do it, but Star Trek First Frontier, 15 years ago, I got it going with my friend. We drew some actual storyboards off of my original script. It was a script that was absolutely terrible. There's no way that anybody would ever want to see what I had written. It was all technobabble, just like you would think it would be. It was all technobabble and all the phasers firing and all the things like that. But the human element I had left out. So when we got to this point where we were going to shoot this, and it was going to be with a professional crew in Atlanta with professional actors, I knew that the script needed to be updated. And so I had some help from a good friend of mine named Keith Brooks, and he and another person named Chad Dowdy, and we together formed this script that you see here, which is more about the humans and less about the technology. The technology takes a step back. If you've noticed, it's in the background, and I think that that's kind of what's making it feel so real for people. They can identify with. Everybody's had a fight with their spouse,
and it definitely had the human element, because that's what Star Trek is about. Is the people.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. It's about without the people. It's exactly what it's about. And when you only present the technology of it, it kind of becomes boring. I had seen an interview with George Lucas, and it was years ago, about Star Wars, and he said something that stuck with me it's forever. And he said in that interview, he said, a special effect without a story is a very boring thing. And now he went on to do episodes 1, 2, and 3, and there are a lot of special effects with a little bit limited more story. So he kind of went back on his own little thing, in my humble opinion. But he did say that, and it has stuck with me. And so I've always kept that in mind, that if there's going to be a phaser firing, there needs to be a reason for that phaser to fire. You need to know why it's firing. That way you are engaged in it. No pun intended, by the way. The Enterprise at the very, very beginning is actual stock footage of the Enterprise from the cage. And it's not the remastered version where it's a CG version. I wanted it to be the actual opticals of the miniature, the 11-foot miniature from 1964. And the reason that I placed that in the film is because this was the biggest debate I made. Without it, it's almost like an intro music, like Star Trek: The Motion Picture had that beautiful intro of music at the beginning before you get to the credits. And I thought, okay, that's like that, and it's much more theatrical. And with it, I mean, I couldn't get the visual effect to look perfect, and it's black and white from the past. But I thought to myself, you know what? In this film, I need to have the Enterprise, the actual 11-foot miniature of the Enterprise, and that's the place for it. So in the cage, at the very beginning of the cage, the Enterprise does a flyby twice. And so what I did was I took that footage, I rotoscoped out the Enterprise, and then I had it do a flyby over our space. And the reason was so that I would have the actual original Enterprise gracing our film right at the beginning, first thing you see. And I hope that paid off. I hope that people recognize. I wanted people to know that was an homage to that Enterprise. So it's actually at the Smithsonian now, the one they can see at the Smithsonian.
Yes, and we went to the Smithsonian and saw that model too.
Oh, isn't it gorgeous? I bet your heart skipped a beat.
I mean, yeah, and they had it lit up, and you could just walk all the way around.
Wow, what a beautiful ship.
Yes.
Now, why did you use the James Horner score as opposed to creating your own score?
That's a good. The reason is this. Okay, I have always loved the James Horner score above all others in the motion pictures. And in the original series, the music is a little bit more dated. And I knew that I wanted to show something that was a little bit more theatrical. And so I knew I had to dive into one of the films. The Jerry Goldsmith score is beautiful, but my favorite is James Horner. So I had the plan to approach James Horner. I wanted to ask him if he would maybe do a piece for us, maybe do something. I could use most of the music as it was, but maybe he could do something new. And the month I was going, I had my plane ticket ready to be bought, and he passed away. He crashed in his airplane. He was the only person in the plane, and I was devastated. So as much as I love his score and wanted to use it, it's also an homage to him. It's just gorgeous music, and also because Star Trek fans, most agree that Star Trek II is one of the best films. And so to have the 30 plus years of emotional investment that the fans have had into each note of that music, it was invaluable to me, because if I could take the music and as a Star Trek fan myself, I knew each musical note. I knew what did what to me as a fan, what made me feel a certain way as a fan. So if I placed that where I wanted it, that would help the fan to get the most emotion out of each scene. So it helped me a lot. To use his music was, I wish I could thank him personally. I had the movie was dedicated to him for the longest time before I decided to change it to Dorothy Fontana. And I'll tell you that was the hard. I dedicated to her over 3 years ago. And the hardest thing I ever had to do was to change the top to saying in memory of. And that was 6 months ago. It was really devastating for me. I gave it to her because she's always struck me as an unsung hero of Star Trek. She is probably the one that came up with the most human elements of Star Trek. I know she almost invented the Vulcans and the way they act towards each other. And so I left the dedication to her, but originally it was to James Horner, and that was for the use of his music. He's just an absolute wonderful guy. And let me tell you, after 5 years of listening to his themes incessantly, daily, day and night, sometimes sleepless nights, trying to get this film done, I feel like I can speak that language now. It's a musical language that he has. And when I hear another movie with his music in it, I know instantly it's James Horner, without a doubt. And that's off of hearing it so many times. He was a lyrical genius, or not lyrical, but musical genius. He was wonderful. And then Titanic, of course, that's one of the greatest scores of all time. So James Horner, he has my heart.
And because, we are such fans of Star Trek II, like you said, I mean, yes. we recognized the music all through your film, and it was great. Right. Yes.
Thank you. That's exactly what I had hoped. I had hoped that emotion feels good to me, and if someone can bring that out for me, I'm happy with that. I'm happy to have that happen. So I was hoping that most people wouldn't think that I was just taking the score because I didn't want to make my own. It wasn't that at all. It was a combination of my love for his music and the homage to him, and then also the emotional that I could get from the viewer at that moment. And I guess it did work. I'm getting a lot of responses from people that are saying how much it's touching them, how much one lady watched it 7 times in a row. I'd never thought something like that would happen, and it must be because of the emotions. And I credit most of that to James Horner's score.
Now, how did you go about getting Barry Corbin in the film?
Barry was, everyone knows Barry Corbin all the way back to War Games. I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought it'd help, that guy. And it's also he was in Northern Exposure, and a lot of people have watched that. But he was in a show called One Tree Hill, and my conventions, they moved from show to show. We would pick specific themes, and the last ones we ever did were One Tree Hill conventions, and he was a guest at my convention. And the first day I met him, I knew he needed to play John April. As we became friends, he's like my grandpa now. I mean, he really is. We talk on Facebook sometimes. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, so fun to work with, and he graced our film. But the reason that I knew I needed him was this. If you guys have watched science fiction movies, or any movies, really, they don't even have to be science fiction. I don't even know why I said that. It's any movie, really, where you have a hero's journey, and then you have a mentor, a wise mentor who is guiding that hero. It's almost 9 times out of 10, the mentor is the most famous person in the movie. All the way back to Star Wars with Alec Guinness, Back to the Future, The Karate Kid. What were we watching? We were watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with George Carlin last night. Now Keanu Reeves is famous, but in 1989 he wasn't, and George Carlin was the most famous. It's just it's Halloween. In Halloween, the wise mentor is Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance. Superman. Nobody knew who Christopher Reeves was, but everybody knew who Marlon Brando was. And that's just been the way it is. And I thought, well, he has the fame level that I need, even though I'm not looking for famous people ever, but the fame level that I needed to validate the film. And so when I asked him to do it, he said yes immediately. It was that simple. And then everybody on set, when he was on set that day, they were all crazy. They all went crazy. They all fangirled. It was a great day. So he is one of the best additions to the film, I think. So
yeah, no doubt about it. We loved him in War Games.
Oh yeah, how could you not? He is also the comic relief in War Games, I feel like.
What else do we have to look forward to your productions in the future?
Right now, I am sleeping, and that's exactly what I was doing. I have spent so many sleepless nights, especially the past few months, trying to get it ready and finished. COVID-19 did hit hard for the conventions. If you can imagine, if you can't have more than 10 people in a room, you can't have a fan convention. You just can't do it. I mean, we need thousands of people in order to make it work. And so our conventions have been shut down, just like Comic-Con and everyone else's. So the funding vanished. We're just living now, trying to survive it, so there was no way for me to go in and do professional mixing and all the things. But since I've released the film, there has been many people who have offered their kind services to fix the audio and make it a little better. I know that was everyone's kind of their number one complaint, was that it was high in some places, low in the others, and I listened to it myself, and I know exactly what they're talking about. So I will have that fixed. So in my immediate future, it is a special edition of this movie, which is going to have the audio fixed, a few of the video artifacts that I noticed fixed, and then some additional scenes that I think I'm going to put back in. Since you're watching it twice, it'd be more fun if there's something in there that was taken out. And I have a few things that I've held back. So that's what I'm going to do in my immediate future. But if I were to ever get the call, which I am not holding my breath, if CBS or Paramount were to give me a call and say, hey, we would like you to do a web series or anything, my team is ready. I know that all of the actors are available. They're not that I've spoken to them precisely about it, but I'm pretty sure that they would be around for it. And we would be happy to continue Star Trek. For me personally, I can do Star Trek my entire life, and I would devote my entire life to Star Trek because it's given me this great life.
That is awesome. And yeah, I don't think anyone has gotten that call out of the fan filmmakers. No one has actually been called to do their own web series for Star Trek.
But we wish they would, because we love a lot of the fan productions, especially yours.
Me too. Oh, thank you so much. I like them too. I think that they're done from the right spirit. Everyone who, like I said, everyone who does a Star Trek a Star Trek fan film has chosen Star Trek to do. That's a compliment. That means that it's touched them in some way, and they're not looking to be famous. Most of them, I don't see in their eyes that they're looking to be famous. They're looking to contribute to the Star Trek universe. It feels good. It feels like you're giving something back to something that's given to you. And for the first time in all these years, 5 years now that I've been editing the movie and working on the visual effects, I finally feel like I've given that, and I'm getting I feel some of the feelings coming back to me, and it's wonderful.
No doubt about it. Well, thanks so much, Kenny.
You're welcome. And live long and prosper.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.